I don't really want to share my experience, but I've kept it to myself for too long. No one knows. But, now I entrust it to you, to read my story. And try to understand the horror that I experienced. My fingers are crinkled and shaking, and tears keep streaming down my cheeks as I struggle to type this. When it was a very ordinary night. I'm exhausted, work at the office is a bit stressful for me, and I really want to sleep. But tonight felt a little different. The gust of wind seemed to feel terrible. The sky looks darker. While I was relaxing on the couch and watching my favorite show, I saw a shadow-like silhouette standing outside my window, its silhouette visible from where I was sitting. I'm trying to focus. Really pay attention to what figure it is. But there is nothing but darkness. I thought that I was just tired. I've had enough work today, that's all. When my favorite show is over, I immediately go to bed. When I was trying to sleep, suddenly heard the sound of my bedroom door. I ignored it because I was too tired to deal with such ridiculous things. But I feel like something is watching me. I try to think positive because I really want to sleep. But then, I heard heavy and slow breathing. At first, I thought it was my own breathing even though I had some doubts about it. So, I tried to hold my breath for a while to prove it. Turns out it wasn't my breath. I jumped up and opened my eyes. My body suddenly froze when I saw someone in the corner of my bed. A little girl about 6 years old, long black hair, in a white nightgown. He looked at me without blinking and smiled broadly. He had a deep cut on his face, his hand that was placed beside him, was full of something red. We both sat and stared at each other for a while, until he let out a terrifying scream. Just then, I tried to run for the door, but he jumped at me, dug his fingernails into my face, his black eyes inches from mine and continued to scream in a shrill voice. His voice was so loud, I kept struggling and trying my best to keep him away from me. But finally, my head hit the table beside my bed. I lost consciousness. I woke up and found myself in an empty basement. My clothes are still complete, except for my shirt. I struggled to regain my balance. I saw my head was full of dried blood. There is a cut on my arm that says, "Will you play with me?" It hurts and hurts so much. Then I looked around me with a feeling of fear and horror, and I saw a metal door with blood seeping under it. I slowly walked towards the door. There seems to be no sign of the girl I met in my room earlier. Despite being shrouded in fear, I finally pushed open the door and entered inside. Behind the door, I saw a scary sight. I saw many corpses lying in the large room all the way to the stairs in the opposite corner of the room. The corpses of men, women, children, and several other corpses were lying there. There was a terrible cut on their arm that read the same as mine, "Will you play with me?" Then I noticed a woman's corpse, which was lying not far from where I was. The woman's neck hung limp, a large gash in her stomach gaping wide. When I got up to take a closer look, I saw a toy fire truck in its almost torn innards. I choked with fright. Then, near the woman's corpse, a man's corpse was lying there with his eyes popping out. Next to him was a broken baseball bat lying in a pool of blood. Then there was a small child lying helplessly in the middle of the room. His mouth was wide open, and there was a toy truck that seemed to have been forced down his throat. His chest was split open and his heart was lying next to his body, and where his heart should be, was a small doll. As well as many other corpses that I could not see one by one. I lost control and threw up. I cried out in fright, but suddenly a thought bothered me a bit. Where is that girl? I don't really want to know where he is, of course. But it's strange, after I got to this place, he wasn't even seen anymore. What I'm also afraid of, is that he's around here waiting to hurt me. I started to think about getting out of this basement, so I walked towards the stairs. But then, I stopped. There was a heavy breath blowing behind me. I turned my head timidly. And behind me, I saw the little girl. Then in a deep voice, he said, "Will you play with me?" He started screaming hysterically again. I turned and prepared to run, but he quickly caught me. Her knife-sharp nails clawed at my back and neck. I tried to fight as hard as I could and finally I managed to throw him to the floor. I climbed the stairs by running towards the exit at the end of the stairs, but as fast as lightning he preceded me and blocked the door. I felt blood starting to flow down my back due to the scratch. He pounced on me again, sending us tumbling down the stairs. Then I elbowed him in the face, trying to push him away. When he was about to kick me, I caught him. His wide black eyes looked at me with wild and ferocious eyes, his fingernails clawing at my face which felt like it had been crushed by its claws. His screams deafened my ears. He raised his hand and smiled very broadly, then his hand stabbed my eye. Everything suddenly went dark. When I woke up, I was already in the hospital, bandages all over my body, as well as one eye, but I'm grateful I can still see. A policeman was standing in my room, talking to the doctor. They realized I had woken up and smiled at me. They informed me that I was the only survivor of a mass murder committed by a middle-aged man, and the police had arrested the culprit. I told them about the little girl I saw, but they said there was no little girl at the scene. I insisted, but they didn't believe me. They just said that I needed a break. 2 weeks passed, and I was allowed to go home. When I came out of the room and passed the waiting room, I saw some toys scattered there. Toy fire engines, toy trucks, and dolls. Tragically, near the toy, sat a little girl with long hair and wearing a white dress, smiling sweetly at me. And in a deep voice he said, "Do you want to play with me?"